All right, so hello everybody. Today I am going to do a video and show you how to break down how to paint this sign. It is a multicolor sign, so I'm going to go through the steps to show you how to paint it. Overview, first thing you're going to do is you're going to paint it all red, the board completely red, and then you're going to put the lettering in stencil on top of it, another coat of red, then you're going to paint a coat of white, peel off the letters, then you're going to put the stencil down for the blue and put a coat of white over those stencils to get your nice crisp lines, then paint the blue, peel off the stencil. I did sand this one, and then I also put a coat of sealant on it as well. So stay tuned and you will be able to make one of these multicolor boards. Today I am painting a wood sign. I'm actually part of the way through it already. I took this wood board and I painted it red, and then once I got my first coat of red down, I cut out some stencil lettering, and so this is actually stencil lettering here. Once I laid this lettering down, the second step that I did was I took the roller. I like to use a paint roller, and I used the red paint and I rolled over it again with the red paint. So I rolled over the top of the stencils, and what that did was that created a really nice seal around the stencils. So my next step I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this whole thing white, and once it's totally painted white and it's somewhat dry, I'm going to peel up the letters, and then that red backing is going to be in the background. So the sign is going to be white and it's going to have red lettering, so it's kind of a reverse stencil. Alright, so I'm going to put the paint in here, and I actually need to get some more white paint. I'm running kind of low, but I like to use chalk paint. I either use the folk art chalk paint that you can get at Michael's or Joann, and if I'm not in that area, I will get the Waverly chalk paint that's at Walmart. They're usually, if you've got coupons for Joann or Michael's, they're usually about the same price, and they all do a pretty good job. So I use both. But I do like chalk paint. It seems to cover a little bit better. It doesn't take quite as much paint, and it gives you a little more solid coat. So I am going to just go over it with the roller. Actually, I'm going to put this on its side so I can get some more paint out. And you can see right away that it does do a pretty nice thick coat. I'm not going to really roll it super thin. I'm going to have it be fairly thick. Done. I am going to let it sit for a little while, let it firm up a little bit, and then I think I might come back and do one more coat of white, and then I will peel up the letters. Alright, so we are zoomed in a little bit closer. When I do this portion of it, I always make sure that I have an ice cream bucket close by, because that's where I'm going to put the scraps. The other thing that I make sure that I have is some sort of tool that's going to be able to pick up the stencils quickly or easily without it causing any damage to the board. So you could let this dry I don't, just mainly more out of me just being impatient. So I'm just going to lightly stick my little tool under the stencil letter and then peel it away. I have a hard time with the stuff sticking to my fingers though. I'm just gonna stick it on here. Sometimes I don't wear gloves. It's easier. It peels so nicely. Hopefully you have some nice crisp lines when you do this. That's always a good feeling. You don't want to push too hard into the paint because you don't want to, if you are peeling the stuff away when the paint is still wet, you want to barely mark it. You don't want to leave too much of a mark. So this stuff seems to be peeling pretty well. I do have one area here of wet, like a chunk of paint. I think I might have to end up going over that, or it might just be an area that I sand a little heavier. Again, just being very careful to make sure you don't disturb any of the painted area. I took my glove off because it's just easier to handle, but I do end up getting paint all over my hands. This is looking good already. Happy with how it's turning out. I like the reverse stencil a little better than actually stenciling the letters themselves. I feel like I can get a more crisp line. So when I cut the stencil, rather than painting in the hollow area, I use the letters and then I paint a full solid coat of paint over the top of them. I just feel like it's more of a crisp line when I do it that way. All right, looking good so far. This one is a really fine letter. This whole word is probably going to take me a while to get peeled off because it's so fine. Looks good, just takes forever. I'm really excited with how this is looking. Contemplating putting this out there as an oddly satisfying video. Just watching the things get peeled. I think I could spend hours on YouTube watching it. Looking good. Alright, so this next part of it, I am putting down the stencil for my blue lettering. So I've got everything cut, and because I've got the spacing already done, I don't really need to cut it all as one piece. I can just kind of conserve my stencil paper and cut it just in the chunks that I need to. So I've got my stencil cut out. I use 813 stencil because it works really well. I feel like I get a very good crisp line when I use the 813 stencil. I've tried other stuff. I've tried contact paper. I've tried using 651, and I just don't have as much luck with it. So I do prefer the 813. It is a little bit extra, but I would guess that the money that I would spend redoing some of the projects if I use something like contact paper or 651 outweighs the little bit of extra that I spend on the 813, because I don't have to redo it. It cuts once, it cuts nice, I get a good stencil. So I've got my transfer paper here, and I'm just going to hopefully eye it up. I'm gonna press it down, and hopefully I get a nice smooth stencil. Scraper is great. I got this from Expressions Vinyl, but I think they get them all over the place, but I like it. I use it a lot. All right, and then you just kind of peel the transfer paper away. Should peel pretty easily if you've got it down. All right, so we got that, and the transfer paper, or the transfer paper that I use, I also got from Expressions Vinyl. I really like it. It's the, I don't know, I think it's like the ultra clear transfer paper. I like it because it's not too sticky. Some of the transfer paper I've gotten and I've used, and it's almost too sticky where it leaves a residue. This is not. It's not too sticky, but it's sticky enough that you can use it multiple times. So you can see this is the same piece of paper, the same piece of transfer paper that I've now used for all three, actually 4 of the applications. So this is my last one. I'm going to try and make sure that I've got it lined up here. And I did cut the stencils pretty small, meaning I didn't give myself a whole lot of room around the edges, again because I'm cheap and I was trying to conserve my stencil paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use, I have painter's tape, and I'm going to kind of seal those smaller edges with painter's tape, and I will use that again. I just put that down on my backing, and I'll just set that aside and use it for another stencil. All right, so here's my painter's tape. This is just, I'm messy. I'm not good at keeping things neat, so I know that for me, it's worth it to take the extra precautions to seal the edges, because I know that I run a good chance of making a mess. So I'm going to just get my edges taped off here. And again, if I would have done a little better, I would have just made my stencils a little bit bigger, but this is 12 inches wide, so just for the sake of doing the width of my cutter, I stuck with 12 inches, knowing that I would just use the painter's tape to make sure that I got things sealed off. Hopefully you're able to see that. So the next step that I'm going to take, I'm actually going to stencil it white first. So a lot of the things that I've read and videos that I've watched, because Lord knows I have watched a ton of YouTube videos. Pretty much everything I've learned and figured out is from the different Facebook groups or YouTube videos. So I learned that the best way to get really good crisp lines is to paint with, once you have your stencils applied, paint one coat of the same color that you already have painted once. And what that does is that creates a nice seal around the stencil. If you really want it to look super neat and almost as crisp as vinyl instead of painting, it's worth it to do the extra step to paint your first coat of the color that you have below. So I'm going, because the white is below, I'm going to paint all of this a coat of white first. And you can see I already did this on the stars here. So then my next step will be to paint the stars, paint that area blue. So this is the same white that I used for the previous step, and you don't have to be super neat about it because it is the same color, so it's not going to bleed through. You just need to get a coat on, so it's definitely not a step that takes a long time. It's a step that goes pretty quick. All you're doing is just getting your coat of white. Like I can see I don't have the stencil down really tightly, so I just tried to press it a little bit. But again, that white is going to be underneath, so it's not going to bleed because it's the same color. So this is a pretty quick step, and then I'll let that dry. I want to make sure that that dries pretty well, and then I'm going to paint the blue. I like to put a polyurethane seal on all the signs that I do as well. I feel like it just kind of keeps them from getting nicked up, keeps them from scratches, keeps them from dirt. So that will be my final step, will be the poly. So getting my white coat down first, then I'm going to be stenciling it with blue, and then I'm gonna put the poly over it. I think I might stain it, or not stain it, sorry, sand it to make it look more roughed up and rustic. So we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. All right, so through the magic of television, I just went for a run and got back. All the paint has dried, so we're going to do the final coat of blue. The blue I'm using is kind of a slate blue. It's not like a bright, vibrant blue, so I think it should look pretty cool, kind of Americana. So I'm using the roller. I like doing the roller for this type of thing, especially if I've done that first coat to cover up like the same color coat like I did all the white. So I like doing that because this gives it a nice even coat, and it usually doesn't have too much of a problem with bleeding or seeping underneath. So I'm just going to go along here, and it goes really quick because we're just doing it with the roller. You don't have to press really hard. I'm not pressing. All right, so now we are almost at the end. I love how this looks, but I do want to sand it just to make it look a little bit more distressed. So I'm going to go ahead, got my just hand sander, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that on and start sanding. It doesn't take much. And then once I'm done with this, I'm going to seal it. I'm going to put some outdoor poly on it, and I think it'll look really great. It looks kind of dull right now, but I might go over it with a washcloth and just some water, just to get that dust off, and then I will make sure I seal it. So, looks good. You can see this is the outdoor poly that I've got. It's works for outdoor, and it's a satin coat. I like to put this on for anything that I'm going to have sitting outside. Yeah, you can see it brightens it right up. So the one thing I learned about poly is with the different colors, you don't want to go over it too long. You want to kind of get one coat done and just keep moving on, because I have noticed that it kind of picks up if you're doing multiple colors, especially like this is the red. It picks it up and it can kind of smear it. So I just try to work fast, get a coat on there, and keep moving on. And you can kind of see a little bit of the red runs. Not a lot, but a little bit. And for a perfectionist like me, that's a problem. It always bothers me because I want everything to look just perfect. But I think we're good. Go this way. One thing I do is I'll try and like look at it. You can see the reflection. So that's how I try to gauge if I got everything. And it looks like I did. One little spot over here. I want to make sure I go over. But yeah, so overall, got it all done. You can see it's a little bit distressed. Looks a little rustic. So I am pretty happy with it. And that's it, all done. Time to go outside.